All right, my renowned fam, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Morris, and as always, I got another banger for you. My guest this week is Professor Jim Marshall, who is a philosopher, and he discovered a pattern, a mathematical pattern in the human phenomena, and he went on to write a book about it called Septemics. He's here today to talk to us about it, explain it to us what it's about, and how it can benefit our lives. And definitely understanding these patterns can definitely help you on your leadership journey. So I'm super stoked about it. So without further ado, here's Professor Jim Marshall. And so here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Stephen Morris, and it is so good to be here. I'm so thankful that you guys are joining and listening. And today I have a very special treat because I have a real life philosopher joining us today. It's pretty cool. Jim Marshall is a pretty cool dude. He has a brain unlike pretty much anyone I've ever talked to, really. Like the way his brain works is really fascinating, and I can't wait to share some of how his brain works with you guys. It's really cool. Hey, Jim, how you doing today, buddy?
Hi, Stephen. Doing fine.
So I'm going to let you kind of introduce yourself and introduce the Septemics. Septemics. Am I saying it right? Septemics?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself real quick and kind of dive into a little bit of what Septemics is and introduce it to our audience for us.
Okay. Well, I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique, and together they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, or situation that arises in the life of any person can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales.
Mind-blowing, first of all, that you came up with all this. And so just for full transparency, Jim and I talked a little bit about this. We had a separate meeting because I needed to understand, have a better grasp and understanding of what he's talking about before I tried to interview him. And so, and I'll be honest, Jim, it took me a minute. I don't know if you noticed, but it took me a minute to before I started comprehending what you were talking about. And then
Yes.
I would say about 15, 20 minutes into our conversation, like the light bulb finally clicked. I'm like, oh,
right.
This suddenly makes sense.
Right.
And so one of the cool things that I want you to talk about real quick is how long it took you to actually develop this after realizing it was happening.
Well, there are a couple of answers to that question, depending on how you want to think about it. The actual concept of that I had discovered something entirely new, which is what this is, came to me in 1995 and led me to write the book. However, I had been working on this for my entire adult life and making notes, not knowing what it was, just observing and recording for many decades before I finally had the quintessential moment where I realized that this was a quantum leap forward for humanity.
Yeah, like before you had that light bulb clicked for you, like, holy crap, this is actually something I need to focus on. Before you were just kind of doing it almost like automatically because you knew it existed, you were doing it. You just kind of maybe not necessarily giving it the full heed it needed. And then all of a sudden one day, what made you realize suddenly like this is groundbreaking, this is earth shattering, and I need to share it with the world?
Okay, well, the best place to start the story is when I was accepted into engineering school at age 16, which I attended on academic scholarship. Now, of course, like all the other engineering students in my school, I thought I was going to be engineering physical things like electrons, motors, engines, airfoils, things like that. Uh, but by the time I had my bachelor's degree, I realized that I wanted to engineer the human psyche because A, that is the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and B, it's the area where we are failing miserably. We're not doing badly in the area of physical technology. We have many brilliant people around, like Elon Musk, who are forging ahead in those fields. But this field, we are, compared to our technology, physical technology, I estimate that we're about 1,000 years behind in human technology. Uh,
So
so,
hang on, let me interrupt you real
so
quick. So you're
yes,
saying we're 1,000 years behind human technology, meaning understand, we understand uh relativity and equals MC squared and all these things. But when you apply that to the human brain, the human psyche, the human experience, we're 1,000 years off kilter from that. That's
yes,
basically what you're saying.
yes,
That's insane.
easily 1,000 years. Uh, and so, really, this book is, you have to realize that the first version of this book was completed in December of 95. So I've been seeing results of this book, what it does to readers for 27 and a half years. And I can tell you that this is the greatest discovery of the century. This book uh, changes the life of the person irrevocably. Now, of course, many great books do that. I mean, when I read the Aeneid by Virgil, which was written 2,500 years ago, I read it in Latin. It changed my life. This book is at that level of impact. It is a world changing book. And I can explain why. But to get back to what I was saying before, because I didn't finish answering your question,
Right. Sorry.
I had a long career as a human development engineer, where I was using engineering principles, engineering tactics to help my clients one on one over many hundreds of clients for cumulatively many thousands of hours. And I started to notice that just incidentally, as my clients were improving, that they were improving in ways that were predictable to me. Now, I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, I came to realize that my client would be at a certain level on a certain scale that I knew because I had observed it in previous sessions. Also, I noticed not only did I see that my clients were improving according to these scales, but I could go out in the world and see these scales manifesting everywhere I looked, not only up, but down, because our society is more oppressive than helpful. So many people get knocked down these scales, and the people who do well go up the scales. So in 95, I had one particular scale that by then I absolutely knew was correct. I had been using it on a daily basis for many decades. And one day, while pondering a specific problematic client, I realized that this particular scale had a 7th level. And that was obvious to me when I saw what the level was, where to insert it. And when I inserted that 7th level into the 6th level scale, the scale manifested mathematically, meaning all of these implications and data jumped out at me without my looking for them. Now, I took 26 semesters of math and I loved every minute of it. So I think in math. Now, when I saw that there was math embedded in this scale, I said, this has to be natural law, because anything that has math embedded in it, like, for example, the Fibonacci sequence, is natural law. So I said, whoa, I found something here. So then I said to myself, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have here of varying lengths are also actually 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way, because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients in making notes. So, knowing what I was looking for, I inspected these 32 other scales. And in a short period of time, each one of them went to 7 levels. And as it did, it manifested mathematically. Now, let me say something about math. Einstein discovered E equals mc squared mathematically. He's a theoretical physicist, okay? And any advanced mathematician can show you the actual calculations that led to that formula, okay? And this was, that's how math works. That's what it's for. So I had discovered math embedded in human phenomena, that these 32 scales were all inherently mathematical, although I went out of my way to not make it that way in the book. And so that told me, wait a minute, I discovered something here. This is a new subject. So then I said, the next realization I had was that I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as a human development engineer, to helping people by the millions if I put this in a book and get it out. So I said, okay, this has to be a book. So I started writing the book, and I spent the next 25 years of my life working on this book, because as an engineer, I had to create something that was foolproof, or I wouldn't release it. You know, when you're an engineer, if you create, let's say, an engine for an airplane, it has to work all the time. It can't just not work sometimes, okay? Or, you know, if you're building an app, right? You have to make an app that is going to work every time you use it. It works. It does what it's supposed to do. So that's why I spent 25 years on this. Now, the first version of the book was completed in December of 95, and I sent it in a transcript form to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees. And they all had different responses, but they all had extremely positive responses. So that told me this is exactly what I think it is, a new subject that opens the door to knowledge across 35 axes of information. So you have to realize first I had to discover the phenomena, which I sort of told you about already, although I did find 3 more scales as I was writing the book, which led to the 35. Then I had to use this data to construct a workable, reliable philosophic system. That took 20 years. But the most time-consuming part of this was expressing this in a way that would make sense to the average reader. And I know I succeeded at that because I have seen the responses of people for 27 and a half years. The general response to people who read this book or look at these scales is something like, wow, There's a lot of wow in this, Like, for example, the scale of relationships. Okay, I'll look at scale of relationships. You mean there's a scale of relationships? See, and I can say yes, and you can find any relationship you have, and you can find it on this scale. So that's sort of how this came about. I went out of my way to design these scales to wrap around the reader. So the experience that the reader has is it's like putting on glasses and looking at yourself in the mirror. Or if you're using it to evaluate another person, putting on glasses and inspecting the other person. So this really opens your eyes, not only when you first read it, but every time you use it. And I'll give you an example of what I mean, something that happens all the time. Let's say a guy is reading a particular scale, right? He's not thinking about his father-in-law at all, right? He's just reading the scale. And he gets down to, let's say, level 5, and he'll say, wait a minute, this is my father-in-law. This is exactly how he behaves. So it's so clear that you can see people in these levels. So, for example, I know, I'm not saying I believe, I know, K-N-O-W, the basic purpose of every president of the United States, going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and many of the presidents prior to him who I studied, such as Lincoln, Jefferson, and Washington. So the reason it was all of the presidents since FDR is because since then we've had radio, we've had TV, we've had newsreels. It's very easy to observe these people, to not only get the text of what they're saying, but to see their body language and to see how they behave. And so it's not hard at all for me to just look at a person and spot him on a scale. Now you have to realize every person is at some level on every scale, whether you know it or not. It's just like the Fibonacci sequence. There are billions of living creatures who have existed who are designed according to Fibonacci numbers. You can find flowers and seashells and pine cones. And if you count the construction, you'll see their Fibonacci numbers. It's one Fibonacci if you count one way, and it's another Fibonacci number if you count the other way. Those creatures don't know anything about Fibonacci. See, that's just natural phenomena. So this is the same thing, only it's human phenomena. So these scales have existed for I don't know how many millennia. And that's not really relevant to the book because my interest is in helping people. I've had a lifetime of helping people. I've been successful at helping people. And this book really helps people. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a buddy, right, who has a romance problem. And you want to help him. You say, Joe, come over here, let me show you this. And you show him the scale of relationships. And he'll look at it and he'll probably say, scale of relationships? I never heard of this before. And you'll say to him, yeah, there's a scale of relationships. Which level is this relationship of yours on? This relationship that is giving you trouble, where is it on this scale? He's going to be interested because you see, you open the door for him to have enlightenment about a problem that he has. So he will look at it. And what will probably happen in a matter of seconds, and I mean like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, is he will find a bracket. That is normally what happens. He'll say, well, I don't really know, but I can see that it's definitely not 1, 2, or 3, and it's definitely not 7. So it's like 3, 4, or 5. And then you say, okay, let's have you read the text of this chapter so you can spot it exactly. He's going to want to do that because he's already interested. See, and again, he has a problem. And this is saying this might help him solve this problem. So he reads the text with interest, and you might want to assist him with it, showing him the glossary or things like that in the way you would help anyone learn anything. And then after he's done, you ask him again, okay, so now where are you on this scale? Or where's this relationship on the scale? And he'll look at it now and he'll probably say, well, now that I thought about it, I can see we're at level 5. That's not so good. No wonder we're having trouble. And he's going to be happy with that finding because it's the truth. So because these scales are natural law, people get it. This is not obscure. You know, it's like the Pythagorean theorem. Anybody can learn the Pythagorean theorem. Once you look at it, it's self-evident, and you've got it, you know, for the rest of your life. You can calculate lengths using this theorem. And this book is the same way, except it's across 35 axes of human phenomena, which means it applies to all human beings. So that's what this is about.
So if I tell you that my wife and I are a level 3 on the scale of relationships, what's that going to instantly tell you about my relationship with my wife?
Well, it would tell me that you have a pretty good relationship. But my response would be, you know, you don't have to tell me. You could just learn this and keep it to yourself. Because my strict rule is never tell anyone anyone's level on any scale, because it's counterproductive. You see, this is so easily accessible, especially if you care about the person. You can always get the person to look at it himself and figure it out himself. It's like a map, you know? Like if you said to your wife, we're going to drive to Georgia. Here's a map. Look at it and figure out the route. Okay? She could do that. Now, if you didn't give her the map, she probably wouldn't have a clue. But that's how easy this is. It's each one of these 35 scales is a roadmap for the corresponding area of life. And if I were to read to you the names of the 35 scales, you would see that I have covered human phenomena completely. Would you like me to do that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It takes a minute. Okay, so there are individual scales and group scales. The individual scales apply more to individuals than groups. These are the individual scales: the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And the group scales are the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales could dramatically improve the life of the reader by itself. Together, this is like a whole new way of thinking about things.
Let me hop in here, Jim. And so
Sure.
the question I ask, okay, so I ask it in the wrong way. So I'm reading Septemics and I'm focused on my relationship, and I see my relationship is at a level 3. What benefit is that going to give me? What is it going to do to help me, and how can I apply it? Because it's like I kind of view it as like the Enneagram, maybe like, yeah, so I can identify where someone falls on the Enneagram scale, but I can't use that to tell them like, hey, you're this, this, and this. That's going to, like you said, that's counterproductive. But what
Right.
understanding where my wife and I fall on this scale, I can now influence our relationship based on what I know. Is what I'm saying correct?
Okay. Yes, very good question. I can tell you with specificity. Each of these scales, each of the 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group individual activity. If the group individual activity moves persons or groups up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. You see, you have a yardstick for human behavior to measure something that's specific. More importantly, just finding out what level you or another person is at on any level is by itself enlightening and beneficial. There's always a realization. When you find a level, assuming you find it correctly, you say, oh, I see, whether it's about yourself or another. Now, once you know the actual level of, for any person on any scale, you can improve that person or scale or group by moving them up one level at a time. All of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior, and combine, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most. Now, to be more specific, once you know the level that a person is at, whether it's yourself or another, you can improve that person by moving them up one level. This is important because I have solved the gradient problem. You see, most people have problems and situations and dilemmas. They don't know how to solve them because they don't know the gradient. Every good teacher, coach, facilitator, therapist in the world understands that human development must be done on a gradient. So if to take an obvious example, I worked as a professional trainer. If a guy came to me who was 100 pounds overweight and said, Jim, can you train me and get me in shape? I'd say, sure. I'm not going to tell him to go out and run 5 miles. That's bad training. Right. I would say to him, look, do you think you could walk 1 mile a day? And he'd probably say, yeah, I can do that. I say, good. So I want you to go out and walk 1 mile a day, come back to me in a week. So a week later, I'd say, how'd you do? And if he said to me, this is murder, I'd say, all right, just keep doing it for another week. And then we'll talk again. You see? But if he said to me, piece of cake, I can do more than this, I'd say, great, let's go to 2 miles. See? That's finding the gradient and improving him by the gradient that works for him. Now, I've trained athletes, guys who, could run a 6-minute mile, which most people can't do even if you hold a shotgun. And it's a different gradient, it's a different thing. So my whole career as human development engineer was finding the gradient and then moving it up to the next gradient above. That's how I found the scales. Because when I saw this happening over and over and thousands and thousands of times, I realized there's some kind of a scale here. And these people are improved going up these scales. That's why some guy who from Georgia, who never met this guy from California, both were at the same level on the same scale and went to the next level up without knowing anything about it because it's natural. Mm-hmm. And that makes this very useful.
Is that what separates Septemics from other practices or philosophical like improvements to the human condition? The Septemics actually identifies the gradient?
Well, first of all, I don't want to generalize about all the others because I don't know all the others. I'm sure there are guys out there coming up with stuff all the time. That's brilliant, you know? I don't know all about all of them. I know what's in the mainstream for sure. And I know about most of them. But the short answer is yes, this is different from pretty much everything else that's out there. And especially since once you have the book, you don't need anything else except maybe a dictionary. But I would say that about every book on earth. I've done a lot of tutoring. I would never teach anybody anything without using a dictionary, because most people don't realize that they don't know the correct definition of a certain word.
Mhm.
I mean, if you ask the guy, what's the definition of philosophy? Okay, he'll go, hama, 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 like Jackie Gleason. But if you were to say to him, do you know the definition of philosophy? He'll say, sure, I know. That's why I would never ask a student, do you know what this word means? Never do it. I say, what does this word mean? And if I don't get a correct answer in 3 seconds, I haven't looked it up. And there's always some enlightenment that happens as a result of it. You mean this has 8 definitions? I only knew one. I didn't know these other 7. You see? And I could say, well, let's look at them all and see which one fits best in this sentence. And then he does that, and oh, now this makes sense to me. So, you know, that's just another way of gradients, getting the gradient in that I became very good at. Really, what I was doing is Socratic dialogue. All the people who have read the writings of Plato, the dialogues of Socrates, all written by Plato, they show Socrates as a person who leads someone along to an enlightenment. He does not tell the person. He asks the right question. And that's what I was good at, asking the right question and knowing when to leave it alone, which is another part, and not belabor the point.
Right.
So, you know, if I could ask a guy a question and get a dopey answer, then we're going to look into this, you see. But if he gives me a bright answer, say, great, let's move on. So again, that's respecting the gradient, knowing when to go into it, knowing when to get out of it. And the other thing is I used biofeedback, which streamlined the whole thing. Because once you know how to use biofeedback, it's extremely easy to understand what's going on in a person's mind. Because every time you think a thought, it reflects in the change in the resistance of your body.
All right, everybody, I just want to interrupt the podcast really, really quick and take a minute to tell you all about the brand new Renown coaching system. This is a system I've personally designed and put a lot of thought and effort and love into. It's an amazing system. Let me tell you real quick why it's an amazing system, because you get real time analytics. You get to see exactly where you were when you started, where you currently are, and how close you are to achieving that ultimate goal that you set at the very beginning. You get analytics for everything. More importantly, the accountability with this system is the best you'll find anyplace else in the world. I get to see everything that's going on and make sure that you are staying accountable to the goals you set. It's truly powerful. You guys just got to see it for yourself. Go to renownleadership.com, go to the top right hand corner, click book a call. You'll get to come talk to me personally, and I will personally give you a tour of this system. It is truly amazing. It's one of a kind, and it's truly, truly powerful. I'm so excited. I can't wait to show y'all. That's all I got to say about it. So let's get back to the podcast. I want to hang out with something you said for a second, because it's really profound, and I think so many people miss it. It is, you know, a great example is, you know, I'm sitting here learning from you, right? Like you've discovered something very fascinating. I find the way you think amazing and cool. And so I'm like, oh, wow. From the first time we met, I'm like, I can learn from this guy, which to me is the most important thing. Who can I learn from? What can I learn from? And so a lot of times, I think, especially nowadays in society, we're afraid to ask the questions, what or how or why or anything like that. And the most important thing is, when you ask the question, just shut up and listen. right? So
Yes.
much growth is within questioning that it's mind blowing. And the proof is in children. What do children always do from about 2 years old on until they're adults? They question literally everything because they're learning and they're growing. Do you think, is it ego that stops adults from continuing that, or most adults from continuing that pursuit?
Well, the short answer is yes, but let me give you some insight into this because I can tell you something more specific. There's ego in the sense of the person doesn't want to look dopey, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And as a facilitator and a coach and a teacher, I don't view things that way. I'm used to getting questions and I'm used to answering them. Or in some cases, getting the person himself to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one part of it, not wanting to look foolish. Another thing is, another part of what you call ego is most people have some impetus to belittle other people.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a natural thing. Now, when you see somebody like Hitler or Mussolini, that's like a walking automaton of belittlement. You know, everything they did was belittling,
Right.
to a point where we're just going to exterminate the gypsies. We're just going to exterminate the Jews, the ultimate in belittlement. We get rid of you. So there are a lot of people like that. And so because of that, people become gun shy. They learn not to ask. I was looking the other day on the news that in the White House, one of the reporters asked Karine Jean-Pierre a question, and she ripped him to shreds and called him irresponsible for asking that question. It was not a dopey question. It was a newsworthy question. It is a question which most people would want an answer to. Not only did she not answer it, she attacked him for asking that question, which tells you a lot about what's going on in that scenario. But that type of thing happens all the time. And so people learn after a while to just shut up, stay by themselves, not inquire. Like, for example, there were many times, I was one of those people that you described who was always asking questions. And I learned as a kid, it's not a good idea. There's all kinds of reasons not to ask questions.
Right.
So, like, for example, I had a girlfriend who I was in a serious relationship with, right? And she came to me and said, yeah, I slept with some guy. And she told me who it was. So I didn't attack her. I didn't belittle her. I didn't start interrogating her. I just said, well, I appreciate you telling me about this. So I thought that was a good sign that we had enough of a rapport that she could tell me that. And she had enough confidence in me to know that I would not go ballistic over her telling me that. Now, a lot of guys would go ballistic, you see, and that's what shuts people up.
Right.
So you can call that ego if you want. I think that's a good way to explain it. I think of it in a different way. I think of it more in terms of people wanting to be right. As a polymathic scholar, my intent was always to learn. I wanted to learn. I had no axe to grind. In other words, tell me about this, like tell me about Bill Clinton or tell me about George W. Bush. It's not a political thing. I want to know. He's the president of the United States. What went on? What were the facts? What do they say? What do they do? And a lot of people, I noticed Obama once said, you can't even mention Ronald Reagan in his circles. He once said Ronald Reagan was a transformative president. He's right, he was. Now, he wasn't saying that he approved of what he did, but he would get attacked because he said Ronald Reagan. It's just like if you say Donald Trump, people come after you with bazookas and machetes. If you just say Donald Trump, you can ruin a whole dinner party. You don't even have to say a sentence. Just go into a crowd, and say Donald Trump. Fist fights break out. People storm out of the room. People say, "What are you, a right-wing lunatic?" So.
And even there's no context, it doesn't matter.
That's right. That's right. So a lot of people are that way. I would say most adults, I would say most people over the age of maybe 13 or 14 are like that to some degree. Some obviously are worse than others. So that blunts the person's desire to learn because you learn by questioning. And I can tell you, I, as a naturally inquisitive person, got into trouble many times because I asked a question.
Right.
And this is related to the fact that I know from working with hundreds of clients over many decades, almost everyone has secrets. In fact, most people have what you might call chronic secrets. Like one guy has a secret that he used to be a heroin addict. Another guy has a secret that he's gay. Another guy has a secret that he used to be in the Communist Party. Different people have different. Now, these are all things that they do not want this to come out for whatever reason. They don't want it to come out. And if you go near that, even if you don't care, their hackles go up.
Right.
So, like if you mentioned that, for example, like Elton John is gay. I'm an Elton John fan. And in the beginning, he came out in 1969. Back then, you didn't say you were gay.
Right.
But eventually it came out that he was gay. And by then, I had been listening to him for many years. I loved his songs. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Didn't change anything. I thought about it for 1 second, and I just went back to listening to his records. So, but for some people, if you say that, they will never buy an Elton John record again, which I think is unfortunate. I don't know if you know about the furor that John Lennon raised in 1964 when he said in public, "We're bigger than Jesus."
Yeah, I remember.
Do you know about that?
I don't remember it. I know about it.
Yeah, it was there were people who would, in the United States, who would get together and literally burn Beatles records because he said that.
Ultimately, that's what got him shot, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know too much about that sad story. But I do know that I was raised as a Christian, that didn't upset me. Actually, the truth is, he was right. They were bigger than Jesus. That's why they called it Beatlemania. Most people today have no clue how big the Beatles were. So whether or not he was right, it doesn't really matter. He's not a theologian. He's not a philosopher. He's a guitar player who sings and writes songs, So why are we getting up in arms about this comment? Even if it was true. But a lot of people, they get emotional about things. I'm not like that. It takes a lot to get me emotional.
I totally respect that.
Because I learned a long time ago, emotion is the enemy of learning. If you want to learn, you want to be analytical, not emotional.
Right.
And you can see it in people. Highly intelligent people Like, for example, Jordan Peterson, Dr. Peterson, highly analytical person. You can see the wheels turning, He's a smart person. Same with Elon Musk. He's a smart man. They're not terribly emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They know that has a place, but if they're being interviewed, people want to know what they think about this and about that. And they tell them, and they give them insightful answers. It's analytical. And I learned long ago, you can't be emotional and learn. You see, if you say, like, there are these people who hate Donald Trump. I don't hate anybody. It's true there are bad people in the world, but I don't hate any of them, because how does that help anybody? How does that help me to hate somebody? Doesn't help. It's not productive.
Right.
So I don't do it. I can look at a person and say, yeah, this guy's dopey. This guy's a criminal. This guy's crazy. You can see that in people. You don't have to say it. And you don't have to get emotional about it. You don't even have to have an opinion about it. Most things, I just don't have an opinion. Most people are very opinionated. I prefer knowledge to opinion.
Right, because
So
opinion
that,
is person based. Knowledge is
right,
fact based.
right. And so that is how I became a polymath. I didn't think of myself as a polymath until just a few years ago, until suddenly one day I woke up and I said, wait a minute, I know about this and this and this and this and this and this. I'm a polymath. I guess I'm a polymath. But I didn't think that way. I was just a guy who liked to learn, who was very studious, who read a lot, who went to school for 28 years, and who a lot of people came to for advice.
Mm-hmm.
So to
So
me,
I want to bring us back
it's
to the
about being
Septemics.
analytical. Yeah.
And so I mean that's really insightful, and I love where that conversation is going. But we're running out of time, and I
Right.
want to finish covering this. And so I apologize for that. But so when it comes to Septemics, what are the techniques and practices individuals can adopt to accelerate their personal growth and development within Septemics?
Well, the short answer is you have some kind of an area of difficulty or unknown or confusion or dilemma, right? And you find a relevant scale. Now, sometimes you have to go through a couple of scales to find one that really hits the nail on the head. Find a relevant scale, and then you can find either your level or another person's level. Let's say you're having trouble with your boss, right? You could look at a scale of basic purposes. What's more important than knowing someone's basic purpose? You can analyze your boss. Where is he on this scale? And if you find that, you will really understand him in a deep way. And so your relationship with him will improve because you understand him. So after you find the level, then you focus on moving up to the next level. So you see, that removes all kinds of detritus from the area. In other words, you're focused on one thing. You're at level 4 and you're focused on level 3, period. You defocus from everything else and you work on that. And if you seriously try, in 99% of cases, if you know the correct level, you will get to the next one up. How long it takes varies a lot because everybody's different. But what I can tell you for sure is, if you're level 4, you cannot go to level 1 or 2. You can only go to level 3 or level 5. If you improve, you go to level 3. And if you deteriorate, you go down to level 5. And you can actually watch people go down the levels. You have a guy, a normal guy, his wife and his daughter get killed in a car accident. He starts to drink. He can't cope with it. Then he loses his job. Then because he loses his job, they take his house away. He winds up a homeless person down. This guy went down many scales, level by level, to get to be a homeless person. out on the street panning, what's the word? Panhandling for quarters. So
Right.
now I also want to say there is a whole section in the introduction of the book, which, by the way, is the longest section of the book, that tells you how to use this to improve yourself, and another section on how to use this to improve another person. I don't want to go into that too much because it's very specific, but there are definite techniques that I give, steps that you go through. I made this user-friendly. So if you go to those two sections, just read what it says and look at the person, whether it's yourself or another, on that scale, you'll be able to use it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because I think just the human condition, like when we have knowledge like this, instantly it's, oh, this person is level 5. I need to help them get to a level 4. So naturally we want to tell them like, hey, look, you're this. But unless that person identifies it themselves, right, they're not going to improve. Like they have to identify it themselves, and they have to agree with it, be in alignment with it, in order for the improvement to actually work, more importantly for the improvement to stick.
Yes.
And so I love the fact, like you said, you go into very much detail when it comes to other people and using this, because it is very important. Do not, I cannot stress this enough, do not read this book and be like, oh, I'm going to fix everybody around me. No, 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 no. That's not how this works. And I see it all the time with things like the Enneagram and all the other like personality stuff. Like people try to use it as weapons, basically, psychological weapon. I don't even know the right word for it, but you can't do that. This is a tool to help you understand people. I think that's the most important thing, is that it's about understanding, and then from understanding, then you can try to help influence them and guide them to making these discoveries them for themselves so that they can improve and they
Right.
can keep those
Right.
improvements.
So look, you can take this book and go around and help people. You can help hundreds, thousands of people, but you don't do it by telling them your opinion of what level they're at. You show them the scale. And you
Right.
see, look, like we talked about, if you have a friend who's having relationship problems, you show them the scale of relationships. Or you can show them the scale of sexuality. Where are you on this scale? Say to him, I'm not asking you to tell me. You find it for yourself. He might not want to tell you what level he's at. That's fine. He doesn't have to tell you.
Right.
It's for him. It's for him to figure it out. Like the scale of thought. The lowest level of thought is denial. That's a type of thought where you say something is not there when you know it actually is. If you think about it, that's daffy. That's why it's at the bottom of the scale. So you have some guy, right? And he drinks a quart of scotch and falls down on the floor every night. You say to him, Joe, don't you think maybe you're an alcoholic? Oh, no, I'm not an alcoholic. No, I go to work the next day. This guy's in denial. You
Right.
don't tell him that. I would show him the scale, okay? See, take a look at the scale of thought. See if any of this resonates with you. It's possible he might get down there, if he reads the whole chapter and say, I can see that that's how I'm thinking about my drinking. I'm in denial. And in so doing, it'll be very easy for him to go up a level to level 6, which is not as bad. See, then he at least realizes he has it. And then he can do something about it because he's not in denial. So, in a sense, if you want to use this as a crusader to help everybody on earth, good. I'm happy. That's what I want people to do. But you don't do it by telling them their levels.
Exactly. Yeah,
You do it
that's
by
what I
getting
was
the
trying
guy
to.
to figure out his own.
That's what I was trying to say. I don't know if I said it as elegantly as you did, but yeah, thank you for clarifying that for me, Jim. That was a hammer on the nail, or hammer on the head. Yeah. Is that, am I saying? I don't even know if I'm saying
Hit the nail on the head.
that. Yeah, nail it. There you go. Thank you. Anyway, so anyway, we're running out of time, Jim.
Right.
Again, I want to thank you so much for coming on here. Dude, you are brilliant, man. I don't know if anyone tells you that, but you're brilliant, and it's been an honor to just sit here and kind of pick at your brain. And I can't wait to tell people one of these days, Jim Marshall, the philosopher that's being lectured on, like, I was one of the people that interviewed him. So thank you so much for your time, dude. And I really appreciate it. Before we bounce, I would like you to go ahead and tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. Do you do lectures and public speaking on this, or
Yes.
uh, okay? So how can people
Yeah.
get a hold of you, get you scheduled, or how can
Well,
people get a hold of your book?
first of all, I want to invite your listeners to go to my website, which is septemics.com, where you can see what many readers have said about this, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself, and there's a 15-minute recorded introduction to Septemics, which you can just turn on and listen to and hear me tell you what it is. So if you go to the website, you'll be very well informed about the subject, and you're probably going to want to buy the book because it's not expensive. You can get it in hardbound, softbound, and ebook. The ebook is, of course, very cheap. Also, my contact information is on the website. So if you just go there, you look it up, and it gives you my email address, and you can send me an email. And that happens sometimes. I get people say, yeah, Jim, on page 87 here, paragraph 2, I didn't understand. What did you mean? And I tell them. So it's easy to contact. Oh yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Sure.
Awesome.
I'm here. I'm here to help people. That is what my life has been about, and that is why I spent 25 years writing this book, because I created it in a way that anybody who can read English reasonably well can dramatically improve his life by using this book and nothing else. You don't need to take classes. You don't need to join a religion. You don't need to spend any money. You don't need to go to a therapist. Those are all things most people don't have time for, don't have money for. They don't want to do it. You've got the book. If you study the book, not read, study the book, you'll get it. It's not that hard.
I love that. As most important things in life are, that they sometimes appear hard, but typically they aren't that hard if you just apply yourself a little bit. You'll be amazed that it may seem hard at first, but once you get into it, get used to it, get comfortable, it's not that hard at all. And so I appreciate that, brother. And of course, all of Jim's links and contact information and links to his book, everything is going to be in the show notes, in the bio, in the description, whatever platform you're on. Just scroll down; it's going to be right there. All you got to do is click on it, go visit him, check out all the stuff he's got, give him a tons and tons of love, guys. This book is life-changing. I believe that 100%. And I do not recommend things that I do not believe in. So if I'm recommending it, I believe in it, get it, do it, apply it. And like Jim said, study it and just learn from the brilliance of over, like he said, over 27 years of studying this one particular thing. It is truly astounding. So once you're done doing all that, head over to renownedleadership.com. Give me some love too. I need all the love and support I can get. I appreciate it. And before I let you go, Jim, every guest on my show has to answer this one question, and you get the honor of having the final wisdom, the final say of the show. Tell my audience, from your perspective, how they can lead like champions.
The biggest problem in leadership is not understanding people. If you have, let's say you own a company, you've got 20 people in it. If you understand each of those 20 people, you will lead them very effectively. That is the underlying problem in leadership, not understanding. Some people need a kick in the butt. Some people need a pat on the shoulder. So if you use Septemics to understand your family or your class or your congregation or whatever, you understand individual people, then you will be able to lead them because you will know who they are, what they're about, and there's no one size fits all. But the book helps you to understand what each individual person is about. And then you become a leader. because they see that you get them.
I love that. And well done on plugging your book into that question. Not many people do that. Well done. That was very professionally done. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time, Jim. It has been an honor again. I really appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, David. It was fun.
All right, everybody. So
Thanks.
that's going to wrap up this week of the Renowned Leadership Podcast. Thank you so much again for joining us. Make sure you give me a 5-star or thumbs up, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Make sure you hit me up and give me comments. Let me know how I can get better, or give me a comment. Tell me how awesome I am. I love those too. Whatever the case is, guys, thank you so much for the love and support. I will see you again next week. And in the meantime, everybody, don't forget, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.
I try to sleep, but you're deep in my mind. Got a hold of me. When I'm awake, I'm all blind.
All right, so that's going to wrap up this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to Jim. Just an incredible brain in that guy. Like the way he thinks, I just think it's so fascinating. It was a lot of fun to talk to him, get to know him, and just listen to his journey and listen to him talk about his discovery and how, just how he saw and discovered just everything. It's mind-blowing, and I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. Make sure you head over to Amazon, grab up his book Septemics, and dive into it. Study it, learn it, and apply it to your life. It is definitely a benefit to me, and I know it's going to be a benefit to you. And don't forget to head over to renownedleadership.com. Click book a call with a coach button, top right-hand corner. You get to come talk to me, learn what I got going on. It'll be a great time. All complimentary. Done, no charges at all. So make sure you do that. And as always, all the links are down below. So make sure you go check out all of Jim's stuff, check out all of my stuff. And so that's going to wrap it up for this week, guys. I will see you all next week. And in the meantime, don't forget, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everyone.